and 5 months later, he passed away. I was also able to express my love for him before he passed away. The fossil fuel sector provides funding for a large number of political politicians, both Republicans and Democrats, and soon, the nuclear industry will follow. I've received several messages from Vietnam veterans since the book came out, expressing their forgiveness and healing. Despite being 87 years old, Jane Fonda experienced an unexpected event. In Vietnam, a woman sat on enemy guns, the actress and legwarmers who caused America to the celebrity who vanished for 15 years. She has returned, but she doesn't look like you remember. Everyone at the Oscars was taken aback by her hair. Her visage conveys a tale that Hollywood attempted to conceal. Some claim she discovered the key, she paid a price. According to others, the truth is more bizarre than any character she has ever portrayed in a film. Fame, fortune, and pressure were all part of Jane Fonda's upbringing. Henry Fonda, her father, was already a Hollywood rising star. Frances, her mother, was from a wealthy family and had royal ancestry. She was born on December 21, 1937, in one of the wealthiest areas in Manhattan. On the exterior, everything appeared flawless. It was anything but in the Fonda home. However, her father was away for extended periods of time due to his acting career. He was aloof, cold, and easily agitated when he was at home. Her mother spent time in and out of mental health facilities. When her mother committed herself while confined to an institution, Jane was only 12 years old. For months, she was not told the truth. It was diagnosed as a heart attack. Later, when she read about it in a magazine, she realized it was suicide. There was no solace, no justification. The family simply moved on. Even attending the burial was forbidden to Jane. After that, she hardly spoke her mother's name. Jane's affluent and well-known childhood turned into a golden prison. Feelings were less important than appearances. She never learned how to mourn in private, but she was raised knowing how to grin in public. Henry, her father, was unable to say, "I love you." Not to her brother Peter, not to Jane. Although he was unreachable in real life, he was able to portray emotions on television. According to Peter, he only heard Henry say those 3 words when their father was elderly and near death. For years, Jane worked to gain his acceptance, but he hardly ever complimented her. He seldom offered anything. Her mother, Frances, suffered from severe mental illness. She was frequently absent. Jane had no idea why. Nobody gave an explanation. She would discover later that her mother suffered from bipolar disorder. 2. Make matters worse, she had experienced childhood sexual assault. Everything was formed by that trauma. Frances's behavior, appearance, and love. Frances briefly returned home from the institution just before she passed away. She invited her kids to visit her room. Jane chose not to go. She didn't leave the house her brother left. Jane was unable to. Perhaps she was unsure of how. Perhaps she was afraid. She could not have seen her mother alive again after that. Frances died a month later. For years, Jane blamed herself. She believed her mother had died as a result of her icy response. Guilt festered. It developed into something sinister. She gave up eating. She then went on a binge. She then purified. The cycle lasted for 23 years. For the most of her early acting career, Jane was bulimic. She later acknowledged that she believed she would die before turning 30. Being a movie star was not Jane Fonda's goal. She actually made an effort to avoid it. Joshua Logan, the director, wanted Jane to co-star with her father, Henry Fonda, in The Country Girl in 1954. No, she said, she simply didn't want to be an actress at the moment. She wasn't prepared to enter her father's world because of their tense relationship. Hollywood, however, continued to pursue her. Logan returned to the scene in 1960. This time, he chose her to star with Anthony Perkins in the romantic comedy Tall Story. She accepted the part. She was already well known on Broadway by that point, but this movie was her real Hollywood debut. It had a good opening for a rookie, earning $1.7 million in the US and Canada. It's interesting to note that a young Robert Redford made his first uncredited film appearance in the picture. It was the official beginning of Fonda's career. Ironically though, the folks she once fled from were the ones who gave her her big break. Her life drastically changed a few years later. She met Roger Vadim, a French director, in December 1963. He was brash, over 10 years older, and well known for having affairs with celebrities like Catherine Deneuve and Brigitte Bardot. On August 14, 1965, Fonda married him in Las Vegas. She was still battling with fears, bulimia, and negative emotions toward her father at the age of 28. Vadim intervened with a risky blend of charisma and authority. He molded her public persona and positioned her in jobs that were thought-provoking. He oversaw her social life in addition to directing and styling her. Though things were gloomy behind the scenes, their daughter Vanessa was born in 1968. Later, Fonda disclosed that Vadim forced her to flirt with women for him and forced her into threesomes. He encouraged her to act seductive off-screen in order to fulfill his desires, using her part include as a tool. She did all of this while silently collapsing. Then Barbarella arrived. The 1968 science fiction movie was a riot of color, sensuality, and controversy. Fonda portrayed a space heroine navigating a dangerous and lustful universe while wearing a skimpy dress. Naturally, Vadim directed it. America was taken aback. The sensuality and nudity were too much for the moment, but they were also unforgettable. However, Fonda's trembling behind the scenes was not seen to the audience. She acknowledged using vodka prior to recording naked scenes. She didn't feel courageous. She was afraid. Vadim had assured her that in the final cut, text would cover some of the photos. They weren't. She and the others learned about it in the theater. That betrayal was deeply hurtful. She gained cult status and became a sex symbol because to Barbarella, but she was also forced into an unchosen image. As Vadim desired, the pressure to appear seductive on film began to permeate her daily life. Meanwhile, her money was disappearing. Vadim did more than just manipulate her feelings. He depleted her of her money. He funded personal projects and threw extravagant parties with her salary. Fonda was not merely funding a union. She was covering the cost of his whole entourage. Her workload increased, along with her notoriety. To pay for his lifestyle, she had to continue working. She had little defense against this gradual financial decline, and Europe paid less than Hollywood. Her sense of value began to erode. She was well-known, prosperous, and well-liked, yet she lacked authority. This was not an isolated incident. There were other men who attempted to mold her besides Vadim. The patterns of Fonda's relationships were frequently the same. Attractive men who desired her fame, wealth, or both. Due to unresolved sorrow, low self-esteem, and a strong need to feel recognized, she kept slipping into their orbit. She was a prime target because of her childhood injuries. Jane Fonda embodied her characters rather than merely playing them. She also stunned Hollywood in 1971 with a performance that seemed too authentic to be staged. She portrayed Bree Daniels, a call girl from New York who was entangled in a perilous mystery. However, Bree wasn't a dream. She was strong, broken, and raw. Fonda interviewed actual sex workers for weeks, learning about their compassion, anxieties, and survival. Despite only costing $2.5 million to produce, the movie made nearly $12 million. It was appreciated by critics. People were talking about it non-stop. Furthermore, Fonda was carrying more than a trophy. When she took the stage to claim her Best Actress prize at the 1972 Oscars, she was carrying evidence that she had formally entered a new category of celebrity. Fonda, however, did not arrive overnight. Gloria Botti, a character who is so broken by the world that she begs for death, was portrayed 2 years prior in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? The narrative is set in the midst of the Great Depression, when desperate individuals compete in a cruel dance marathon in hopes of winning cash. It's depressing. Sweating is going on. It's devastating on the soul. For the part, Fonda trained like a boxer, dancing till her legs failed her, and recording emotional scenes. There were 9 further Oscar nominations, including one for Best Actress. Although she didn't win that evening, it smashed records. The winner was Maggie Smith. However, Fonda was now viewed by the public as someone who might break your heart with a single glance, rather than as a beauty queen or starlet. Her life was a maelstrom off-screen. She wed French filmmaker Roger Vadim in 1965. They had a daughter named Vanessa by 1968, but the glitz quickly vanished. Vadim pursued other women, gambled, and drank. Fonda later said that she cried every day following the delivery and that she struggled with postpartum depression. She didn't have a maternal feeling. She thought she was vanishing. Their marriage ended in 1973. Jane Fonda took a plane to Hanoi in July 1972. The world was astonished by her choice to travel behind enemy lines during the still-raging Vietnam War. She didn't only go for the trip. Tom Hayden, her activist companion, had pushed for it. She flew undercover, stopping in Paris and Moscow, before arriving in the capital of North Vietnam on an Aeroflot aircraft. She was welcomed like a valued guest by uniformed North Vietnamese authorities upon her arrival. They were fully aware of their actions. She was more than just a tourist in their eyes. She could be exploited to make America look bad because she was a Hollywood celebrity. Jane was shown everything they wanted her to see for 2 weeks. Schools were destroyed, industry were devastated, hospitals were bombed, and war museums displayed heartbreaking pictures. She received treatment at the Vietnam-Soviet Friendship Hospital for a foot injury sustained in an airstrike. Doctors at Viet Duc Hospital informed her that they were researching birth problems brought on by chemical assaults in the United States. She also went on a tour of the Red River Delta's bombed-out dams, where residents said U.S. forces were attempting to flood agricultural areas and destroy food supplies. It was denied by Washington. Jane thought they were real. She returned sure that America was not just attacking military installations but also farmland and citizens. She didn't keep quiet about it either. Her journey garnered international attention and immediately infuriated her own country. Before her, several people had traveled to North Vietnam. None of them were internationally renowned, Oscar-winning actresses. Despite being reporters, activists, and even soldiers, when she used it, everything burst as her voice continued to carry. She also took on the position of a broadcaster while she was in Hanoi. Jane gave a number of broadcast appearances on Broadcast Hanoi, the official station of North Vietnam, between late July and early August. These discussions weren't merely about peace. She instructed American pilots to return home and cease bombing missions. She referred to the airstrikes as genocide and accused their commanders of war crimes. She talked about the resilience and adversity of the Vietnamese people, sharing her observations of kindergartens, textile plants, and hallowed locations such as the Temple of Literature. However, it was not her voice that most infuriated Americans. It was a picture. Jane was brought to a North Vietnamese military location on the final day of her journey. An anti-aircraft cannon, the type used to shoot down U.S. planes, was shown to her there. One of the most notorious incidents in American pop culture was what transpired next. Jane sat on the weapon, clapping and laughing. Cameras swung. The picture went viral. She changed to Hanoi Jane right away. It was a vicious blowback. Veterans felt deceived. Pilots' families were incensed. Lawmakers called for a treason trial. Her prosecution was demanded by veterans of foreign conflicts. A few states even considered outlawing her films. Her career almost fell apart. Death threats were sent to her. Everywhere she went, protesters followed. A protest had been transformed into a scandal by the picture, which would haunt her for the rest of her life. Years later, Jane acknowledged that the picture was the worst mistake she had ever made in her 2005 autobiography. My life, so far. She claimed to have been emotionally spent, bewildered, and weary. She had no intention of sitting on the gun. After a musical performance, she had been dragged there and mindlessly followed the mob. It might have been a setup, she wrote. But I allowed it to happen. She referred to it as a 2-minute mental breakdown that she would always regret. She repeatedly expressed her regret to the warriors, their families, and anybody else the picture could have offended, but she was never forgiven by many. Despite all of her regrets, Jane remained true to her primary convictions. She never expressed regret for traveling to North Vietnam or for opposing the war. She was clear. She continued to be an activist. She stated it was her responsibility to speak out since she thought the war was wrong. She claimed that despite the fact that many Americans had visited Hanoi, only she, a well-known actress, had received punishment. In speeches, blog entries, and interviews, she claimed that the true cause of the outrage was her audacity in publicly criticizing the administration, and she didn't feel bad about it. Tom Hayden, her lover, supported her. They were married in 1973. 1 year following the trip to Hanoi, their house became a hub for political activism. They organized the Indochina Peace Campaign and carried it throughout the nation, making a well-known stop at the Ohio State Fair. In the 1980s, Jane even started making aerobics videos to raise money for Hayden's political campaigns. They stayed married for 17 years, produced anti-war movies together, and had a son named Troy in 1973. Their impact on political activism persisted even after their 1990 divorce. In 1980, Jane made a stunning return to the workforce. A comedy about 3 women standing up to a sexist employer, 9 to 5 became a huge hit. It became the second most grossing movie of the year with over $13 million in the US and $103.3 million globally. In addition to becoming a hit, the film had a message. It resonated with working women worldwide. The #1 song on the charts was Dolly Parton's theme. A Broadway musical and TV show came next. Audiences had once again fallen in love with Jane. In 1981, on Golden Pond followed Jane, who played a daughter attempting to get back in touch with her elderly parents, acted against her real-life father, Henry Fonda. Their tense and aloof relationship in real life was reflected in the movie. The film became the second biggest box office success of the year, after grossing over $119 million. It received 3 Oscars, including Best Actor for Henry, out of 10 nominations. Since he was too sick to come, Jane accepted the prize on his behalf. Only a few months later, he passed away. Jane Fonda did more than simply capitalize on the 1980s fitness craze.